We're glad to have you back. Recently, the House of Representatives passed a vote of no confidence on the Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Kayode Fayemi.
He was declared not fit to occupy the position alongside the Minister of State for Mines and Steel Development, Abubakar Buhari. This was because both ministers failed to appear before the House during the sectoral debate on the revival of moribund Ajaokuta Steel Company.
Now, the motion on no confidence vote was moved by the leader of the House, Fayemi. The majority leader, in a chat with newsmen, said he raised the motion for the vote of no confidence out of patriotism and interest to resolve the crisis surrounding the moribund project.
My point is that the minister himself did not see fit to respond to the minister to the speaker who had written to him personally. And he gave excuses why he wouldn't be there, the minister, his junior minister wouldn't be there. And the speaker took pains again to respond to his reply. But I think yet again during the hearing, after the hearing had started, a hurried letter was dispatched to the speaker on the floor, again by the permanent secretary, perhaps as a response to the speaker's reply. The language of the letter suggested that they were going ahead with their concessioning and it was a fait accompli, and in other words, this was a waste of time. And my point is that
well, that's Fayemi there. We're joined by a lawyer and public affairs analyst, Muyiwa Shobo. Good morning and thanks for joining us on TVC Breakfast.
Nice to see you.
Now, this sectoral debate organized by the reps, where the Minister of Mines and Steel Development, Kayode Fayemi, was supposed to show, and his Minister of State, Buhari, they didn't show. Now there's a vote of no confidence. The minister has said, what's the big deal about not showing up at this debate? After all, we've come before you about 4 times. This is the first time, really. And we duly informed you that we would not be at that sectoral debate. What's your take on this vote of no confidence?
I think it's a big deal. Okay. If the National Assembly invites you and you fail to show up. We have to put this within context, especially when talking about Ajaokuta Steel Complex. Like you rightfully said, it was moribund. And there was, and because of the complexity of the whole issue, well, the federal government or even the minister may be right in looking for alternatives, but you cannot execute any alternative without the National Assembly, without that sector that has the oversight over Ajaokuta Steel Complex. So,
but according to him, they already knew about this concessioning and they had appropriated about 2 billion naira for that to actually happen in the 27 budget.
Whether they know about it or not is not a question.
Okay.
They will always, if they have questions or further questions and they're required to appear, you have to. I mean, this is a huge national asset. And if the National Assembly is concerned about any aspect of that concession, they have the right to call you. They have the oversight over it. They're representative of the people. I think it is height of irresponsibility for Dr. Fayemi to just kind of ignore it and then send in a permanent secretary to go and distribute letter and so on and so forth. He must show up. And the vote of no confidence, I tell you, is even slight, it's minor. Because if you look at other countries, it's never done where a minister is required to appear before the representative of the people and you willy-nilly just say, because I've been there 4 times. What does it take to appear and explain yourself? They call it legislative advocacy. If your position is different from theirs, you have the responsibility of trying to move them, make the argument for them to see your point of view. It's in fact, it's an opportunity to convince them of your position. Even if they don't require to appear, I will have asked them, okay, can I come before you? Let me explain what is going on. These are reasons for doing this. This is how much it will cost.
All right.
I mean, legitimate questions.
Yeah, but besides the Minister of Minister of Mines, this is not the first time a minister is not showing up before the House of Reps or even before the Senate committee on anything at all, as the case may be. But getting back still on this issue of vote of no confidence, what are the real implications, legal or otherwise, of the implication of the House or the National Assembly passing a vote of no confidence on the minister. What's the implication of that?
Well, the implication, one, is legally it's leading to something. Because, you know, the House has the power of subpoena. And they can subpoena you. They can force you to appear in front of them. And I think this is the first step towards that. Like, look, I think it's like a warning shot that says, you better be careful what you're doing here. And for the minister to have a vote of no, the effect of that on his being able to do what he intends to do, like this concession, is serious. Because if you are getting a foreign entity to come in and do concession with you, and now there's a vote of no confidence coming from the oversight committee, it chills that process. And I don't know why we have to go through that. I mean, he ought to know the effect of this on his ability to carry out the concession. It's really unwise for him to do so. If he was not going to appear, write a letter, call them. I mean, you have the numbers of these people. Like the majority leader, for instance, both of you are in the same party, you know each other. Oh, sorry, I will not be able to do this because of A, B, C, D. And I think he kind of underestimated their reaction, which to me as what they call an unforced error.
Well, I wonder what you think really is playing out here. You actually mentioned that this is a national asset, and I'm sure many people are wondering, look, this is actually a national liability. Since 1982, we gather that, governments over the years have spent about $8 billion on this same basket case called Jakarta Steel Complex, and no solutions have been found. What exactly is at the root of this?
Well, again, one, I mentioned before I appeared our lack of intellectual capacity to do certain things. And when we recognize that we're not capable of doing this, yes, we can look for alternatives. And one of the alternatives is this concession thing. I mean, we
so the
did
same
it.
Russians and Ukrainians
well,
who we hear were the ones behind building the complex in the first place.
The thing is, before you get to the party to whom we are doing concession, you have to look at the reason for this concession. Steel, of course, is a worldwide required, needed product. If we are able to do it, it will be really good. And I think to keep on trying to fix that is not a bad thing. We can't just abandon it. We have spent over $8 billion, and we can't just say, okay, well, since we've done it for so long, the 1980s, we're just going to walk away. I think we have to keep on trying to fix the problem. And I think one alternative is to do the concession if we don't have the local capacity or ability to do it. Now, going to the party with whom we are doing a concession is another question entirely. And that is why we have to be careful. And that is why the National Assembly becomes relevant. Because they can raise questions that, well, this is the same party that you dealt with before and nothing happens. And they have to look at all the attendant issues. And the fact that you are doing this without them, or you are trying to, it will indicate maybe you are trying to hide something. I mean, this is a national asset. It belongs to the people of Nigeria. It doesn't belong to the Ministry of Mines or to Dr. Fayemi. It is a national asset that we have to be careful in treating, especially knowing the history of this particular steel complex.
Yeah, but the point there is Nigeria has lots of geologists, have lots of metallurgical engineers, have lots of mechanical engineers and all of that. If it's the issue of incompetence, then why did Nigeria bring or decide to even set up the company in the first place?
Well, you see, sometimes your ambition may surpass your capacity. And I mean, we're kind of ambitious in that area, because we see...
Could this really be what is playing out here?
Maybe
because
that's what,
in the oil industry, we see most of the major players there are expatriates, and not because not because you don't have Nigerian petrochemical engineers, because you don't have Nigeria. It's not because Nigerians are not there.
And it's almost as if the same thing that's happening with Jakarta has happened to the refineries and every other, white elephant projects that that's what we've come to describe this project as.
Again, we're very ambitious people, and we see benefits. Where are we supposed to see the benefit? But most of the time, we don't think about the process of getting to where we get the benefit.
How do we get there?
How do we get there? And that is where we are. I would not classify that plant or that as being irresponsible. I would just look at it as we need several things. Now, several governments failed to look at. Part of it is working together to have a common agenda, because we know ourselves. There's always individual agenda that will be hidden from the public. And as soon as we remove those individual agendas and the political agendas, maybe we'll have a better view of what is going on with the Ajaokuta Steel Complex. I would not advise walking away from it. Is it possible
that there is some kind of conspiracy, both within and outside of Nigeria, to ensure that Ajaokuta does not take off? Because any nation, I mean, countries like Russia, the United States, China and the rest of them, once they got their steel right, they're able to produce steel, iron, and what have you, then development can happen.
Yeah.
Is it possible that there is some kind of
a grand agenda?
A grand agenda for Nigeria not to just take off? Conspiracy theory.
I see where you're going,
yeah.
But for me, I don't think you never have enough steel in the world. And if that argument is right, then the same argument can be applied to the issue of oil production.
Look, maybe what the question should be is, what would be the benefit to Nigeria if Ajaokuta works?
The benefit is enormous. Look at the benefit of steel production to India or to China, even to Russia, even Canada. You see that there's a lot of money to be made in steel. If we can make it work, it will elevate us to that status. It brings a lot of revenues as well. Now, the question is, how much do you have to spend to realize that revenue? So it's got to stop somewhere. And I think it's a step towards stop the leakages that we're going to this concession agreement, which I think is probably at this time the best thing to do. Maybe we can do concession for a while we develop the local capacity to do this. But regardless of what the intention is, you still have to do it holistically, and you have to get everyone around the table, including the executives and the legislature and so on and so forth. You cannot isolate that process. And because it seems that this type of isolation, this type of step is what actually led to where we are now, when the government thinks, well, we can just go by it alone and so on. So it's a good thing, but we have to do it together.
All right, now that the minister wants a concession arrangement, the House of Reps has passed a vote of no confidence. It seems like there's a limbo somewhere, but what's the way forward here now? The
way forward is for the minister to go back to the National Assembly. Mend things with them. He can do that. I think our democracy is where we need to develop the capacity for what they call legislative advocacy, which is when you have, I think every ministry now should have an office of legislative advocacy, where you have people who are trained to actually work. I'm not talking about legislative because they have this Office of Legislative Affairs with the presidency. No, that's not what I'm talking about. You have people who are trained in this way, who will go there
to lobby,
to show reasons. It's not only the minister. It doesn't get to the minister until it's a critical point where you have all these questions. You have staffers who will have worked on this and meet with the legislative staff to kind of lay everything on the table, address questions, answer questions, raise the inquiries before we get to these.
That means, of course, you have people who understand the workings, who have a good grasp of, what we're even talking about here in order to be able to defend it. Yeah,
the people are called educated because they can find out facts and learn. That's sort of education. They can do research, and you don't know everything. I was on the legislative staff, and not here, but somewhere else, and they throw questions at you. You have to go and do the research.
Yeah.
Look for it, and the point, the objective is to allow the public to know that you're working for them. Okay, that you are representing them. As regards this public, the public's interest is always number one. Okay, I think we're going to get there, but we're not there yet, because these type of problems should not arise between the legislature, the legislative houses, and a minister. I mean, it sends up a bad. I'm talking about the image is not good, the message is not good as it regards our democracy. So both parties should look at that. I think the National Assembly actually felt pushed to the wall. They felt disrespected. That's why they come up with that vote of no confidence. And Dr. Fayemi should see that, take a step backward, because the objective is to protect these assets.
And the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's the bigger picture. And both we should be able to step away from our personal ego in order to achieve this.
And it seems to be a pattern that's played out over and over and over again, where the National Assembly summons a minister to come explain issues that affect their ministry, and then you get...
It's not good, and I don't know. Well, look, you may call them any name you want to call them, individually. But let us look at the institution that they represent. You may call them Oniranu or whatever they call them, and say, oh, these people are not serious, they're all thieves, they are corrupt. But look at the institution that they are voted in there to do a job. And even if you are doing that job a little bit, not much, a little bit, we have to respect that.
That little bit.
That little bit. There's no way. And this issue of checks and balances, that is what democracy is all about. I mean, the executive cannot act with fiat and just do anything it wants without, and they have the power of the budget. Because they have the power of the budget, they have oversight responsibility. What the Ministry of Mines is trying to do cannot be accomplished without law. You can't just go and do concession on a national asset without having some legal backing for it, whether in the budget or outside of the budget. A law must be passed to do that anyway, and that should be in the appropriations bill.
Besides the minister, as a ministry, besides the ministry or the minister, as the case may be, what's the role of the presidency here? Because we assume that whatever the minister or with the ministry is doing, he's carrying out the agenda
of the
executive. So. But we have seen in some instances where when some of these things happen, the presidency is silent sometimes, and then a lot of speculations go here and there as to the body language of the president and all of that. So can this be seen as the National Assembly versus the executive? Or the minister against the National Assembly?
That's what it is, but it needs to be explained. Okay. You know, the buck stops at the president's desk, okay, ultimately. But again, the president is one person, so he needs all these cabinet members to carry out the agenda. Now, the president will have set out the agenda. That doesn't mean that you can't have a minister that can act out of that agenda. And of course, it's now incumbent on the presidency to say, look, that's not what we intend here. But you know, the way things happen in this country is you have staffers, you have all these special assistants, senior special assistants, so on and so forth, who actually don't know what they're doing.
And for all you know, the president may not even be aware of what's going on right now.
He's not aware.
So, but again, is the responsibility of the president to know. The president is supposed to know that, and people surrounding him are supposed to know that. Maybe out of all these 250, 300 personal assistants, you'll find one who is able to say, "Look, this is not looking good." But so it is I think we will get to a point where we look for people with capacity to do things rather than political intentions. And
let's come back to this issue of Ajaokuta Steel Complex, which is one of the major reasons why the reps called on the minister to come explain or profile solutions on how this moribund complex can be revived. According to them, there are allegations that there is a possibility that the concessionaire may have compromised officials of the steel development company. That is on the one hand, which means there's a suspicion that some corruption is going on somewhere. Added to the fact that back and forth, the complex, the concessioning of this same complex was approved by OBJ, the former president Olusegun Obasanjo, only to be revoked by Yar'Adua. Is it possible that that is why we're where we are right now?
See, we are in a country where anything is possible. We'll just put it unfortunately. But be that as it may, even if that is the complaint of the minister, even if that's the suspicion, we need
by the reps.
By the reps.
Yes.
We need to able to open
Put
that
it, lay
up.
it out there.
Lay it out there and seek explanations. But we can't seek explanations if we are avoiding one another. We are avoiding each other. So if you have that suspicion, it's a big issue. It goes to the fact that it was approved first by President Olusegun Obasanjo, revoked by another president. Maybe it was approved by another one and then revoked again. So one thing you have to understand is a lot of money is involved in this. A lot of money. So far we spent up to about $8 billion.
Yeah.
That's billions of dollars. We're not talking about Zimbabwe dollars here. We're
No,
talking, yes.
real dollars.
So there's real dollars. I mean, the green ones.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of money. And so anyone
Does it
who's
speak to the lack of continuity in government? When, you know, one government comes, sees a lot of good about a particular project, and the other one comes and says, no, this is not.
It may be.
It's not
It may be, but I will not suspect that with this type of asset, because this is a huge thing. I think the problem here is in agreeing on the concessionaire, given the history of the whole place. I don't think, well, lack of continuity may be part of it, but I don't think it's major to the point of not. I'm expecting someone like Dr. Fayemi with all his academic proficiencies that we talk about, a PhD in this and so on, to see beyond this and be able to bring it to the table.
See beyond the politics
yes,
of
the
it
politics
and look
of
at the bigger picture.
And I think, I'm sure he's probably listened to all this analysis somewhere. The best thing for him is to make up, okay? Even if he has concern, I'm sure minority, I mean, is a majority leader of the House, understands. He's a lawyer. He understands what's going on as well. They can sit down and work this out so that we'll look good. Even the concessionaire. Let's think about the message that we're sending to the concessionaire.
Exactly.
Okay, potential concessionaire. It
So
may not even be this one, maybe another one.
Another
If we don't
one,
like
and
this
others.
one, there are others. I mean, you have concessionaire from Russia, you have from Canada, you have India. I think
Nigeria too we have.
Nigeria too we
yeah.
have. I think the Nigerian concessionaire should be given a priority in the first place. That's another.
All right, we have to leave you here now. Muyiwa Ashobo, thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you, it's my
Thank
pleasure.
you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Right.